If you'd like to use your phone as a device to take photographs, or especially if you want to record video footage, sooner or later you're going to need to have a tripod or a holder to hold the device for you. So for example, like just now when I'm talking to camera, I'm not holding on to my phone. I need something to hold the phone for me, and there's a whole host of options from completely free through to spending a bit more money. So we're going to run through them and the difference between them, because they all have pros and cons. They're all better suited for certain things rather than others. The first thing that I'd like to show you is a traditional tripod. So I'm sure all of you have seen something that looks like this. This is a traditional camera tripod, and as you can see it's got a screw thread on the top, because most traditional cameras come with a screw thread on the bottom. So you can attach it to the tripod and then it's nice and steady and ready to go. Where people get a little bit muddled is well, as far as I know, all phones and tablets don't have that screw thread because they're very thin compared to a traditional camera. So therefore, to use a tripod, or most, even mobile phone tripods, the smaller ones which I'm going to show you, they still come with that screw thread. So the chances are you're going to need some sort of holder, an adapter to go with the tripod so that you're able to securely hold the device that you want to use. And again, there's a whole range of them. I've got a few, I'm going to show them to you. I'm going to talk you through the pros and cons. So mobile phone holders look something like this. It's a little clamp that you can put your phone into, but it also has the screw thread that can then attach to the tripod or whatever it is you're wanting to use it in conjunction with. Now, this is one of the cheapest ones you can get. It's only a couple of pounds, but the reason it's so cheap is because to get the phone in and out, you've got to manually wind this little thing bigger or tighter to make sure you can hold it in position, like so. But beyond having to do that, which just takes a few seconds more than some of the other ones, it's quite sturdy to use, and obviously, let's say it's got the screw thread and then it's then ready to attach onto a tripod or similar. The next sort of price range up, because these ones we're talking literally £2-3, is something like this. So it's exactly the same idea. It's got the screw thread at the bottom, but the difference is it's on a spring. So you can just click it into position like that. The other good thing about this one is it's got a screw thread here. It's also got a screw thread there. So if you're wanting to film pointing straight down, it's giving you a few more options. And it's got an attachment here, which you can use. Like I say, it just gives you a few more options depending on what you're wanting to do. All of these don't stretch far enough to be able to hold your phone in portrait mode, and they certainly won't stretch far enough to be able to hold a tablet. So there's other things that we'll look at which show you how you're able to rotate your phone's positioning, such as, again, budget model, but it's exactly the same idea. This is similar to the first one where I've got to manually turn it to get the phone in and out, tighten it up. But the difference with this one, it comes with this extra bit, which means it can rotate. But for it to be able to rotate all the way down, and I always forget to do this, you've got to hold your phone slightly off center so that it's got the clearance to rotate. I'm dropping it. But beyond that, again, screw thread on the bottom, so that's what's going to attach to a tripod, ready for you to either film, or if you're taking a picture and you need your phone to be nice and static. If you'd rather use a tablet compared to a mobile phone, they're just not going to fit. But you can get the equivalent for tablets, so they're just a lot bigger. Again, it's not going to quite stretch in portrait mode, but it does stretch. I can never do this one-handed, the really unintuitive. There we go. In landscape mode. And also these little feet splay out just to give you sort of a wider sense of balance under here. And then on the back again, there's the screw thread to fit onto your tripod or similar, and this particular one has this with a ball joint, so you've got a bit of maneuverability if you want to change the angle and whether it's in portrait or landscape mode. As I mentioned in one of the previous videos, if you want to use a tablet to do your filming and photography, you need to account for the weight. If you try and put a tablet on a small tripod and have it pitched at any sort of angle other than straight up, there's a high chance that the weight of the tablet might make it fall, and then you might damage your screen or break it. So therefore, if you want to use a larger device, you will probably have to use a larger tripod, which is fine. These, like I say, you can get these really cheap, they're really accessible. If you ask around, you will probably find somebody who has one, they're not using it, they're happy to get rid of it. The downside with them is, the thing that makes them sturdy is the fact that the legs splay out quite far. And because of that, they take up a lot of room. So depending on the area that you're trying to film or photograph in, it may get in the way or may not fit. So for me, my studio is tiny. It's only just over 2 meters square. So if I then have to put a big tripod up for use, it's going to take up a huge amount of space. So instead, you can get much more compact mobile phone tripods. So exactly the same idea, it's just a lot smaller and it takes up less room. This one, the ones that I prefer, have a ball joint compared to, if I grab this again, traditional tripod that you just tip and rotate. So it just has a bit of a nicer movement to it. But with these, you get various ones. They all more or less look the same online. They all say they have 360 rotation and they're all around the same price, but some of them have extra features. So this one looks very similar. The main difference, which is why I prefer this one, is because, if I loosen this a little minute, yeah, it's got the rotation that way, but it's also got a little cutout in the ball joint, whereas this one is solid. So because of that little cutout, I can tip it forward. So if I pop this on here to show you better, stick my phone in there. So when it's in the upright position, it's similar to how I'm filming at the minute. So it's pointing straight forward. But with this one, if I wanted to, I could tip it forward and film. My hand's working, film straight down. And because of the, you can rotate these as well. So you can rotate it so that the leg isn't going to be in shot. The other thing you can do with this one is it lifts up, which this one doesn't do. And also it has a little Bluetooth remote, so you can start and stop recording without having to reach and press the button all the time. So considering it was pretty much the same price, I can't remember exactly how much, but I have put it on the handout. This one has way more features than this, so it's really worth reading the small print and figuring out exactly what you're getting for your money. So the traditional tripods have static legs, rigid. You can also get ones that go under the name Gorilla Pod, Octopus, things like that. They're bendy, so they've got bendy legs, which a lot of the time when they sell them, they're telling you that you can bend them round things and it'll grip onto it. In my experience, you try and do that, the weight of this is just going to make it fall. And if you're using something that is precious or costs money, you do not want it falling and breaking. So I would never, I've not come across one that grips well enough to risk it. But what these are good for is if you're filming on a surface that isn't quite flat, you can sort of pose these to account for that. So it will sit nice and sturdy. Tip this down. There you go. Even on surfaces that aren't flat, so they're worth knowing about. But again, as my go-to, I prefer the more traditional rigid variety. The other thing as well, you don't necessarily have to go and buy a new tripod or a new holder just because it's got a bit of maneuverability issues and you wish that it could move in more ways. So for example, with this one, this is the first mobile one I showed you, where it's got the ball joint but it can't tip forward because this is solid. And say I've already got my holder, but again the holder doesn't allow me to rotate it. Again, for a couple of pounds, not a lot at all, you can get a ball joint adapter. So it's got a little cutout. So what I could do is I could attach this to this. The other thing I should tell you, the reason I've got so many of these blooming adapters is because quite often they come completely free with things. So again, if you ask around, there's a fairly good chance you will find somebody who's got some that they're just not using and don't want. So then I happily give them to you. It is always worth asking. Shy Ben's getting out. So anyway, tripod that doesn't tip forward, but I've now put the little adapter onto it, and if I loosen this, oh, loosened it too far, now it can go all this way, and it can tip, need to loosen a bit more, that way, and it can also flip that way, so now it's in portrait mode, so it's got a much bigger range of movement compared to how it was doing just a second ago. And like I say, you're looking at £2-3 for one of these. They're dirt cheap, so they are worth having if your current kit isn't quite doing what you want. What is useful for a lot of people is something like this, which is massive. So this is called a swan or gooseneck tripod. I'm hitting myself on the head with it. I can open it up, it will clamp, oh come on, clamp itself to the table. Oh, there we go. So that's now on the table. I rotate this back up, and now this I can pose into any angle that I want, like so. And then my phone will clip into it. There we go. I can rotate it. I can tip it. It takes quite a lot of effort, but that's quite good because it means that when you've got it into position, it stays there. My husband keeps stealing this for when he's having Zoom calls with his friends and family. So they are good, especially like say if you want to do bird's eye view, so shots of your hands and stuff like this. But as you can see now, the slightest knock and you've got this going on, which just because I'm doing silversmithing and jewellery making, we do a lot of hammering. It's all quite physical work, so if this is attached to my bench, as soon as I start doing anything on it, it starts bouncing, which just isn't good enough. But there's nothing stopping me attaching this to something else, so something other than the work surface that I'm directly working on. In my studio I've got beams, which I'm going to show you in a minute, or I could attach, you know, just anything other than the surface where you're working, so that if you cause any sort of reverberation, it's not going to make the holder bounce. And then we've got this, which again, this came free with something. This is sold, you've got to be careful because this is sold under the same terms as that, so it's sold as a gooseneck or a swan neck phone holder, because in theory it's posable, but in reality it just does that all the time. But you know, in theory it's similar, so you grip it onto a table or a surface and then you can bend it into position, but it is just beyond useless. I'm not even going to comment on that any further. Just to point out that, again, it's being careful. Look into what you're getting, read some reviews, because I know when I started out I found it really tricky, because everything comes with a good review, especially on things like Amazon and eBay, and then you get them and they're just not up to scratch. So I think it is good to see different things. This is one of my favourite ones. And just see the difference between them. The reason this is one of my favourites, similar to the thing that I just threw on the floor, this was more designed for a GoPro. If anyone doesn't know what a GoPro is, it's a little square camera, which I've got somewhere, a little rectangular one. They are rough and tough cameras, so they're designed for being flung around, getting in water, strapping them to your dog, and your dog runs through the forest, all this sort of stuff. A lot of snowboarders and mountain bikers, people like that, use them. So again, this one comes with a suction cup because it's designed for a really light device, but I've attached it to my mobile phone holder. And the reason I like it is it's very easy for it just to sit on my bench or sit on a shelf, and you can change the angle and point it at whatever you want to point it at, like so. So again, it's not, it doesn't give you the height of a tripod. It's going to sit lower down, but sometimes that's useful, because again it came free with something, and it's just, you know, it's good to have around. I do enjoy using it, but I would never trust the suction cup to hold on to my phone. So in theory I should be able to stick this to a window and then stick my camera whatever angle I want to use it, but I just wouldn't trust it. But in terms of having it sat flat on a table or a shelf, it's spot on. The other thing, there's all these fancy things you can get. There's absolutely no harm in just sticking your phone on something. An awful lot of the videos I do, because I can't be bothered to go and grab, you know, whatever holder, I literally just prop my phone up on something. In this case, I've got a reel of masking tape and a tin of paint. I'm not going to be able to hold it at an angle, so I'm not going to be able to tip it forwards and into the downward motion at all, but in terms of having things straight onto you, it's completely fine. So again, don't feel that you have to go and buy all this stuff or even any of this stuff. You will be able to work out a way of supporting your phone. Sticking with the high-tech theme, like I said, with the gooseneck holder, as soon as I started hammering or doing anything, it's bouncing around. So one of the ways I get around that, especially, this is where we normally do soldering, if I'm wanting to film straight down onto a project that I'm soldering, I have a very high-tech piece of wood that I've just screwed into the beam, and then I can put my phone in here, which is again just one of the really cheapest chips phone holders, and then the phone will point straight down onto the thing that I'm trying to film. So, you know, whatever you use, it doesn't have to be expensive, it doesn't have to be high tech. You just need to figure out how to support your phone or device in a way that enables you to capture the footage that you want to capture. The same goes for this one. So this is a selfie stick. I've never used a selfie stick for selfies in my life, but again, they come free with so many things. So what I've done is I've just shoved one up in the beams. It's not tied down or anything, but it's quite stable and sturdy. It comes out. You can push it that way. You can turn, if I loosen this, can't do it one-handed, but I can turn it so the phone goes another way. And again, I've just got one of those cheap phone holders attached to the screw thread. And again, it points straight down on here, but just obviously that's much higher up than this. Another thing to point out with this one is if you're using a bit of wood and you want it to be height adjustable, then you just screw more holes in the wood, because all I've used to attach the phone holder to the wood is a little screw, so a blunt-ended screw. I can't remember, I think it's 6mm, 5mm, 6mm. I'll have a look and put it in the notes, but like I say again, cheap as chips, and it does the job that I need. Last up, this is a gimbal. This is the only premium piece of kit, but the reason I'm showing it to you is it actually makes a massive difference to certain types of filming, and also they've come down hugely in price recently. So I can't remember exactly, I think this was about £60, whereas they used to be hundreds. Again, I'll put more details in the handout. But it's basically a Steadicam, so I can lift this up, and when I move, my phone is moving with a nice smooth action rather than juddering around all over the place. So I'll also, with these videos, I'll share a video that I've taken with the Steadicam so you can see the sort of effect it gives. With the slightly more expensive ones like this one, this is the Osmo DJ, it's one of the most popular ones. It's got a tracking function, so what you can do is when you turn your phone on that you're using to record, you can click on the thing that you want it to track, so say a person or an object, and then when you're moving around the room, that person or object will always stay fairly central to the to your camera screen. So again, they're worth knowing about, especially if you're filming things like exhibitions or larger projects that you want to walk around. something like a gimbal will make a massive difference.